What if you could build a sustainable and profitable business while at the same time have a positive impact on society? Social entrepreneurship could be the solution for creating jobs and wealth, and at the same time bring about that social change that we all need. In today's episode, my guest is Adnane Addioui, co-founder of MSize and a social impact enthusiast who's helped hundreds of young people build sustainable and profitable social enterprises. We're going to be talking about why social entrepreneurship is key to social and economic development and how you too could be the next social enterprise success story. Thank you so much, Adnan, for joining today. My first question to you is, what are the fundamental differences between a social enterprise and a traditional startup?
I think the first thing that one should know is the intention, because the reason why you launch a project is different. People who launch projects or startups or social enterprises, their main goal is to solve a social problem. So when you have a crisis and you have to make a choice, if you're not driven by solving a social problem, you can just say, okay, this project is not working, I'm just going to do something else. But because you're driven with a desire to solve problem, that's one, I would say, of the main pillars. And the second thing is more, I would say, in terms of process, it depends on countries and regulations, because in many countries, the regulation is very thorough and very tough. Because if you want to have like a status as a social enterprise, you need, because you get a lot of benefits in terms of taxes and so on, but also you have to reinvest like a certain amount of profits into the communities. You have to do a lot of number of commitments. So it's not just about an intention, but it's really implement in the ground. So in the world, you have a lot of examples like big corporations, public benefit corporations. These are types of companies that are in their DNA driven by a social purpose. That's, I would say, the main two things: intention, which is the purpose, why are you doing the project, and how actually are you fulfilling in making sure that you're creating the impact that you want to have.
Okay, that's interesting. So, from your experience, what do you think it takes to actually be a successful social enterprise founder?
I would say patience and resilience and a commitment to the cause, because social entrepreneurs are activists. They're not just entrepreneurs. So they have the burden of being driven by a cause, and it's that cause that fuels them. So I would say these three things. Yes. So the purpose driven, like really focus on the purpose, resilience, because it's not easy, and the importance of patience, because changing systems doesn't happen overnight. Like you need time, and I think in one issue of the current world we live in, where people have a tendency to do things very fast and quickly, that people want to receive results tomorrow. Sadly, you can't do that.
Okay, well, do you have I mean, I'm sure you do have an idea on how long it takes on average to start really seeing results.
It depends on the type of project, because for example, if you have a model to provide literacy for people, uh, you can have results like one day after, because if somebody doesn't know how to read and write, and the day after they know how to do that, you can have that result. Of course, when you go to things more complicated, like changing mindsets and changing cultures and changing education systems, this takes more time. But you can have like what is called the low hanging fruits, like small projects and things that can show you that you go in the right way. So you can't really answer this question directly, because it depends on the project, it depends on the country, it depends on the environment, it depends on the person, and it depends on what type of change you want to have. That's about it.
So, what are the things that keep potential social entrepreneurs from actually fulfilling their potential?
Again, this is also a complex question, because you can have things that are inherent to the person, like directly, and things that are indirectly. So what the social entrepreneurs are, I would say, weird creatures, because they need, as every human beings, they need to rest, they need stability and things, but at the same time, because they're so driven by a cause, that they also they need to have a batteries and new source of energy to be always be able to renew, even though things don't go right, and always keep the boat floating, and always keep it running, because it's never just about them. Because regular entrepreneurs, like usually it's about themselves and or their staff, their teams,
Mhm.
and that's about it. But for social entrepreneurs, it's always about plus one. It's always about somebody else, because as we were saying at the beginning, the main reason is solving a problem for a community or for a society. And the second part is things that are related to the context, the environments, because regulations are not the same everywhere, because policies are not the same everywhere, because markets are not the same everywhere. So it's really like, you cannot give a generic answer to that, because in some countries, for example, like Germany, last year during the COVID times, most social entrepreneurs were not afraid of losing their jobs, because the government was there to provide them with safety nets and keep their jobs and the jobs of the people, because they were considered part of the structure of the economy, which is not the case in other places. So it's really like one should look like specifically on countries and contexts and see what's in there and what's available and what are the challenges. And of course, there are places like easier and there are places that are harder.
Mhm.
It's always very difficult
Mhm.
to do that. And I'll advise people who are watching us. There is a ranking. It's a research that is done every 2 years by the Thomson Reuters Foundation. It's called the best place to be a social entrepreneur. So the last one was out in 2019, I think, or 20. And people will be surprised that the best place to be social entrepreneurs is Finland, is Canada, is Singapore, is Hong Kong, and in France came five. It was 10 like 2 years ago. So a lot of people who don't understand what social entrepreneurs means, because it's not about poverty. It's not just about working with poor people. It's always about answering a need. And you would find that there is a direct correlation between strong economies and resilient systems that provide solutions for everyone. So I really advise people to go and read this report and
Mhm.
see, and have an open mind about all of that.
Can you give us like an example of a social enterprise that did really well, particularly in the MENA region?
The MENA region, besides Egypt and Lebanon, this is all very new to us. It's all very new. Like Francophone Africa and Maghreb and so on, we're still it's in infancy. Tunisia is doing much, much, much better than us, because and thanks to the 2011 revolutions, it was an open platform for ideas, for resources. So the glass ceiling disappeared, because everything was there to be fixed. And I'll give you like two examples, one in Lebanon and one in Germany. Actually, two in Germany. So in Germany, there's a project that works with women who has breast cancers. So one guy found out that uh, having people who are visually impaired actually can detect breast tumors before it happens.
Hmm.
So he created a whole project where they employed individuals who are visually impaired that actually has pre-diagnostic. And there was a report that was published last year about this project, another one, that they were able to save around 1 billion euros of social security for the government, because, as you know, prevention is the key in all of that. There's another one in Lebanon, two in Lebanon. One's called Arc-en-Ciel. So these ones, they do everything. From They have nursery homes, they have kindergarten, they have factories, and it's a social enterprise that it has its purpose to integrate the vulnerable ones, the elderly, people with special needs, by creating a whole dynamic. So this is Arc-en-Ciel. And I'll give another one. This one is in Kenya, where and a person found out that rats can actually detect mines without like stomping over them. So they designed the whole program to do a demonetization of landmines, using rats. And that's how we call the concept of social innovation, that things that are beyond the principles. But these things to flourish, you need systems. In Morocco, you have like an excellent example. You have Centre Noor in Casablanca, where it's one of the first private non-profit hospitals in the country, dedicated for people with special needs.
Mhm.
And it's sustainable. They have 200 beds, and they're able to cater.
It's just sometimes we don't know whether it's actually a social enterprise or if it's a charity.
It's a non-profit. No, well, it's in Morocco. It's very simple. In Morocco, because you have no laws, so you always have to go beyond. Uh, uh, the difference between a regular charity and a social enterprise is business model. Regular charities don't have business models. It's always, I need to go look for grants. I need to go and look for projects.
Right, donations, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So, and in social enterprise, for when you talk about NGOs, it's always about, do you have a sustainable business model?
Mhm.
And of course, it can change. So these are some examples of things that can work and has worked elsewhere.
So as a social enterprise, you still strive to make money, to be profitable, right?
If you have, of course, because if you don't have resources, how would you be alive?
Exactly. Yeah. So
That's
it's
why
a
the different.
business with a social
That's why
cause,
it's
right?
complex. That's why it's more complicated than regular business, because you have two purposes at the same time. Is number one is making the money to be alive, and number two fixing the problem. So that's why it's more complex than a regular business, because it's not just about like selling and doing stuff. We have to make sure that you're solving the problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So say, for example, I am a striving entrepreneur. I want to set up a social enterprise. What are the steps for me to get started? How do I get
It
the
doesn't happen like this. Like you don't.
especially hire the the talent because I may not have the money to hire
There's two
talented
separate
people.
things. People who want to be social entrepreneurs, they never start by saying, "Oh, I want to be a social entrepreneur."
Yeah,
Never,
good one.
never, never. Like it's always there is a problem, and I'm committed to fix it.
Right.
Yeah, and the
Okay.
problem that affects somebody else, not a problem that affects me. So that's so like I have a lot of people coming to me. Oh, I want to be a social entrepreneur. There's always a confusion between doing charity work and becoming a social entrepreneur. So it's not the same. Again, so it's not the same thing. So the inner motivation is not the same, and the process is not the same. Like if you'd ask, so if you go on Ashoka.org, you find a list of social entrepreneurs, like 4,000. If you ask any of them, would you qualify yourself as a social entrepreneur? At the beginning, they would say, what does it mean? The only thing I'm doing is fixing a problem. And then it happened to have a name. So that's one part. The second part is, and that's I think somehow the privilege that social entrepreneurs have compared to regular entrepreneurs is that people join you for the cause. They don't join you for money. The main motivation for people and staff and teams is because they want to have some meaning in their lives. So that's why a lot of people do accept to have different pay scales, to have different conditions. Of course, it has its good and its bad, because people who are not really driven by purpose, they would say, okay, I'm too tired for that. It's too much. I didn't think it was going to be that complicated, because a lot of people assume that it's just, like a part-time job. Or I finish my work at 5 and then I just go and spend 2 hours in an orphanage. It's more complex because you have to be driven by that passion. And when in times of crisis, that's why you would see that. But the other issue that we had, that you can see, this is in all sectors in Morocco, and in not just Morocco, many places, is that because the younger generation now wants things fast, this whole idea of Generation Z and so on. So it's very difficult to build the patience and resilience chip into people's minds. And they're like, okay, I want to do it very fast. I want to do it this way. But you cannot build a house like faster than the resources you have. Time is time. You have the same time. You just add resources, but you cannot shrink time or add it more. So that's why it's a very complex. And if we have any young person or graduates or so ever, my advice would be take the time to learn. Take the time to ask questions. Take the time to be humble. Don't assume that because Google is there, that you know everything. Because the more you know, the less you know. And that's and when you link it with staff and people, that it's very linked to how people view themselves and their attitude. So it's always understanding and always learning and always pushing, and also understanding that things don't always come your way. So you have to make some trade-off.
Right, right, right. I totally get you. And I think this search of like instant gratification is coming through our overuse of social media because everything is so right there. And we believe that even like our efforts should produce instant results, which in fact doesn't
No,
happen that way. It takes years to build.
not McDonald's. It does. You don't just go there and say, "Oh, I want a Big Mac," and they give you in 5 minutes. McDonald's, it took them 100 years to get that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I actually urge my students to read about, the story and the history of McDonald's, how it got started. It's really amazing to really study these
Well, get
successful
them if
companies.
you have students, get them to study Elon Musk, because
Right.
Elon Musk is his story and the story of his mother is out for me is more impressive than anything else.
Yeah, because he went through depression
It's
and
not even this, like how in the early 2000s he was already setting course that Earth is not going to be viable at some time in either in this lifetime or the next one. So we need to find an alternative. And they, in that whole mission to Mars. So in the early 2000s, the beginning, late 1990s, he already put himself as a challenge to build a city in Mars. And that whole idea of vision thinking and forward thinking, it's not just like forward thinking and then staying waiting, but constantly working. And the interesting thing is when he was like a couple of weeks ago named the richest person on earth, his comment on Twitter was like, "Okay, time to work." It's not the whole idea of, okay, I've reached it. Like as you were saying, the gratification of the moments. Okay, I'm done. So there's always a constant. You would see that a lot of people who are self-made, they don't stop.
yeah.
They don't stop because the passion to do more is always there.
Yeah, I think the drive is not really financial. It's beyond that. It's something about contribution to the
Mhm.
world. It's you know, making use of their talents, their qualities, their skills to the world, and that's what he's doing as well. But like Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, I mean, there are not so many of them at the end of the day, right? That have so much publicity, but I'm sure there are other ones that are working really hard
But
in.
they didn't get. It didn't. But what people know or don't know is that they didn't get publicity randomly because they worked their ass off, nonstop. Like you have people now, and they're like, "Oh, I work a lot. I'm too tired." But what do you do? And
Mhm.
it's like, "Oh, I don't have time." That this whole idea of I don't have time is an invention. Because if you want to do something, and I always say this with people who like football, and say you can be as busy as you want, but if a match comes up, you are going to find the time.
Absolutely. That's right. That's so
You
true.
are going to find. So take this motivation and put it and anything else.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I say the same to people who tell me I don't have time. I tell them it's not that you don't have time, but it's not your priority.
Yeah.
If it was your priority, you would make time for it, right? Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about Elon Musk, who is a role model to many young people. Tell me, is there any Elon Musk of the social enterprise world?
Well, you have a lot of people, and I advise people to go on ashoka.org because they will find a list of 4,000 amazing individuals. Like I'll mention a guy I met. He happened also to be German, Andreas Heinecke. So he in the late 80s, in the 1980s, he understood that people who are visually impaired don't have the same opportunities. So he launched a whole program called Dialogue in the Dark. And then he got cancer twice. So every time he was sick or something, he launched a program. Instead of saying, "Oh, ما عنديش ودك شيء," and it's not complaining,
Life is over.
Yeah. So so when he was diagnosed with his first cancer, and I think that cancer was a bit tough. So he launched another organization called Dialogue with Time for people who are in the late stage of their life, who need comfort, need company. So he's been able to build a multi-million euro company called Dialogue Company, and they do amazing work. Hundreds of people are working, disabled people are working, and by genuinely creating innovative solutions. And from Morocco, I know there was an American woman who lives in Marrakesh, and I did an interview with her. It's available online. She made Morocco home for 20 years. And she lives in Douar outside of Marrakesh, and not the fancy lifestyle, not what most Moroccans would like to do. So when she went to live in that Douar, because her husband had some work to do there like 20 years ago, and then they decided to, settle in. So she discovered this whole issue of child marriage and all this kind of craziness. And then she designed a program called Project SOAR, one of the most amazing women and teen empowerment program for girls, teen girls, that help them to have excellent grades, empower themselves, reduce child marriage, reduce infant poverty. And she's been doing this for the last 8 years, working nonstop. So that's Mariam. There's another one. Her name is Nora. And of course, I'm not even mentioning Aisha Shinna is the one, because these are the figures that people need to know about.
The pioneers, right?
Yes, the pioneers, and they're resilient. They're still active, because that's what's crazy. Like you would see, like if you hear the story of Aisha Shinna, how in the 60s and the 70s she was arrested, put into jail, and all that because she cared for a cause. Mm. And then like a lot of people should ask and look for stuff like
Yeah.
who's doing what, and always, how can I learn from it? Because there's a lot of people say, oh, I like this quote from this role model, but it doesn't mean much if you just take a quote and don't do anything about it.
Absolutely. I think we should definitely talk more about these people, because they're changing the world for the better, and they're not getting as much attention as they should. They should be the role models of the youth. Enough of Zuckerberg, enough of these guys, these Silicon Valley guys. I think we should really take a deeper look at who is doing what in the social enterprise world, definitely.
And
So you mentioned the situation in Morocco is a little bit less favorable to Tunisia and Lebanon. What could the government and society in general do to encourage more social entrepreneurship? And where does your job and your role come in?
we can talk about this for like 500 million hours.
I know.
It's been like a decade I've been doing this, and it's so Morocco has two issues. One is cultural, a culture of lack of initiative, lack of innovation, a lack of trust, individual and public trust. All of this is curable. It's all curable. But it doesn't get. It's not going to get cured like overnight. You need time, and at the same time, there is like we need a strong political will to fix problems and also to trust each other. I've been telling this a lot, and I'm still telling it. It's easier, like for somebody like me, to do a project in another country than to do it here. It's easier to have resources and support and so on in other places than here. And it's not because there are no resources here. No, there are more resources here, a lot. But the way it's been managed and handled in progressing administration, and a friend said, and I'll quote him, he was like, sadly, we see a holocaust of innovation and potential. That's why when you were talking about talent, well, that's why a lot of people leave the country. A lot of people leave, and for good reasons. I'm not blaming them. They leave like every day, like hundreds of people. And then because they offered better spaces to flourish and do things, and it's sadly like the government has not played a role in, and I'm not even going to say to stopping this hemorrhage, but to build attractiveness. And this attractiveness is linked with good education systems, good healthcare systems, good infrastructure, rule of law, corruption, all of that. It's linked. You can't just like, it's not just something that you'd say, you put it. And I've and I've and I have not been able to find a listening ear from our close ecosystem with this. On that, there is a need to put the right resources in the places where is much needed.
Right. Okay, so that's pretty much a very long-term goal. How does MICE and you actually contribute to changing things?
It's called MSIS. It's
Oh,
Moroccan Center for Innovation.
sorry,
It's
I'm
fine.
sorry. Sorry.
Well, how do we contribute? We it's like, so I individually have been at this of more than a decade. So I've launched MSIS like 8 9 years ago, and it's a very long and difficult journey. It's a very long and difficult journey. So how we're putting pieces of the blocks is, I would say, like now these topics have become a bit mainstream. Like a proof, we're talking about it right now. You and I. Like 10 years ago, this wasn't the case. That's number one. Number two, we have a lot of demand from a lot of young people who want to understand, who want to do things, who want to venture. The demand is higher than what we can offer. For training or support as well, we receive hundreds and hundreds of demands. And again, you cannot answer everyone. By creating and generating spaces and rooms for people to know that projects like this are possible and that you can fix problems. Again, and when people ask me what do you do, I said, well, before I was referring to myself as a coma, which means keeping people alive as long as possible so that a transfusion or something comes so that they're able to regenerate. And now I'm more thinking about a surgeon, like a obstetrician who delivers babies. So you have your obligation is to deliver as many babies as possible, and of course to protect the lives of the mothers and the babies. But there is so much you can do alone, because to to make sure that the health of the mothers and the babies are there, it's a whole effort of a lot of people. So I would say it's a coma for babies, so that we have to put as many resources as possible so that we generate as many individuals that are going to be mature enough in the long run to be able to improve the situations, because life is not always about having superheroes. We need a lot of normal individuals doing their jobs and committed and doing things beyond themselves, because that's what's going to improve the world and societies in itself.
Wonderful. I mean, I know for a fact that your work and your mission has had a huge impact on lots of people. I've witnessed that myself. I've seen it. People are talking about it. So I just want to congratulate you on what you do. And we really need more people to be doing their job, like you said, properly, and also give it all their heart and all the passion they have, because it changes the world, whether we want it or not. It does change the world. So what is your message to end this whole conversation to young people who are thinking about entrepreneurship, wanting to start a business? What is the main message that you have for them?
Find the problem you care about and solve it today. Don't complain. Don't complain and don't wait and then just like go and, let's say, for everyone, for those who don't know what they want to do in life, find your purpose right now. For those who do something, who are active, always ask yourself how you can do more, how you can collaborate more, how you contribute more. So if you don't do, because nature does not live in a vacuum. There's always a force that's going with it. So it's rather, let's be a whole conspiration of the good than waiting for a certain death that's going to us. And one last thing that in Morocco people are not, I would say, aware of, is that we don't have a planet B. So if we're not aware of our responsibility of this planet within the next lifetime, there won't be any planet anymore. So do whatever you can to save it, to protect it, because otherwise we have no more options.
Yeah, yeah, so true. Thank you so much, Adnan, for your time and for your contribution today. That was really. How can we interact with you? How can we get in touch with you?
Yes, I'm quite active on social media. Like sometimes if I don't reply, people just need to ask again. So I'm quite active on LinkedIn and on Facebook
Thank you. Okay,
and on Twitter and
perfect.
shukran, Safaa. Thank you for all your hard work.
Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Let me know down below what are the social enterprises that you know of, that you admire, or perhaps that you are clients of. So let me know in the comments. We need to talk more about them. We need to really put them forward. So this is the space for it. As always, make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Like the video if you liked it and share it with your friends. And let's stay in touch on social media or send me an email. I will happily get back to you. And I'll see you next time. Bye.